Today I'm talking with James Nutter, a fiduciary financial advisor at I Am Wealth. What he has found over years of doing this work is that physician families have a surprising relationship with money. High income, incredible professional success, and still overwhelmed, still stretched, still not sure whether all the moving pieces are actually working together. Welcome back to Supporting Physician Spouses. This is the go-to podcast for physician spouses who are done white-knuckling through life married to medicine. I am your host, Kendra Harvey, professional certified life coach, advocate, mentor, and the person who will say the things that no one else is saying, but we're all thinking. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so very grateful to be here.
So tell us a little bit about how you would describe what you do.
I serve families who carry an enormous load for other people all day long. And then they come home and try to figure out their own lives with whatever bandwidth they have left. When brilliant people spend a decade of their 20s and 30s becoming the best clinician they can be, and then they wake up one day making more money and feeling more anxious about money than they ever did. The gap right there, the gap between how capable you are and how out of control you feel, that's the gap that I sit in.
Yeah, I have felt that gap myself for years.
Your skill sets, whether they're clinical or as the chief operating officer of the household, can absolutely be applied and redirected to your money with the right training.
A lot of times, especially when the physician is in residency or those early years of building a practice, there isn't a lot of bandwidth. In our situation, I did take over a lot of those roles during that period. I knew what the budget looked like. I knew all of the details. When it comes to finances, those roles can get a little bit murky. Sometimes one person is handling everything. Sometimes they're trying to share responsibility, but there always seems to be a gap between what one person knows and what the other person knows. I know what undersupported looks in like a lot of different areas, but specifically when it comes to money, what does undersupported look like?
Yeah, I would start out by saying 3 of 4 American families say money is their number one household stress. You know, we all live in this society where we all compare and contrast on Instagram and post our best lives ever. And yet, as a society and a culture, we don't talk about money whatsoever. Nobody really trains physicians in med school or residency. You're taking out $300,000-$400,000 of these loans to pay for your rent, put food on the table, pay for your tuition, pay for your books, do all the things, but no one's ever with you saying like, hey, let's build a budget and actually think about like, how much do you need to take out versus like, hey, let's take out a little extra, take a vacation. And then the other side of it is, how are we going to pay this down? There's no education on any of it. It blows my mind, but it's very taboo in our culture to talk about money.
Yeah, nobody handed us an instruction manual for this part of our life. Especially during those early years, it's easy to be like, oh, we're just going to make so much money later.
Yeah.
That this isn't going to be an issue, but at the same time, economic forces are changing. And then when you arrive there, it's like, no, the financial landscape has changed so much that now it's actually harder for me to pay those off than I thought it was going to be when I started medical school.
Definitely. I mean, it's literally your whole brand. You think it's going to get better once you get to attending hood, and then once you get the raise, and then once you get your second contract, and it only gets better when you get better. Until you kind of had that conversation with me about like, you get better. That really struck a chord with me, and I love the thought process behind it.
Let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
Specifically about the people that you're working with. Are most of them married?
That's a great question. I would say maybe like 75% or 80%.
Okay. And of those 75%, how often is one person or the other typically in charge of the finances? Like when you're having your meeting, who is present?
These are great questions. So typically every single year, I will go through a process of like, who are our most successful clients and what did they do? What were the behaviors? And every year it's changed slightly. It could be an income level. It could be how much money they have left over to invest. It could be their specialty. It could be, are they 1099 or W-2? But the one thing that's remained consistent since I Am Wealth was founded in 2021 has been, do both partners have like both feet in the door. Even though one might be more the financial quarterback and like it more, but does the other person show up and learn, or at least attend 80% of the meetings?
Well, 80% is actually lower than I expected, honestly.
We do a free financial wellness diagnostic, and I made it mandatory over the last 12 months that both partners have to show up for that or the meeting's canceled or rescheduled. And I just made that
Oh, I
mandatory.
love that.
It hasn't happened all the time, but I've just heard people in those diagnostics say, my money, me, I make the money. I'm buying my house. When their spouse is sitting like right next to them, and it's like, where is the we? And that's like an immediate red flag. Or it's almost like marriage therapy, and it's like, we need to work on. But commonly, those types of people might not be the best fit for us. That's probably
Yeah.
1 out of 20 potential people I see. So it's not happening all the time. I think it's really important for even, my wife's Steph, her family grew up very great with money. They like talked about money pretty often, but she doesn't like thinking about doing taxes or investing. She does it, but it drives her nuts to even think about it, So
Yeah.
even though one person might own the finances more than the other, both couples should have full awareness of everything that's going on at all times. And it takes time. I got married 12 months ago, and we're
Yeah.
still working on some my next phase for her is I need to make sure she has all my login credentials and everything for all the different accounts. Or like when I take a distribution from our HSA, like where do we store the receipts for that? So just keep in mind too, like I do this for a living and it's not like I'm 100% perfect right now. It certainly takes some time, but I think both people should be aware of what's happening.
Yeah. Maybe this is common and I'll have to apologize to my husband later. I'll have to have him on so we can have a money conversation. But for so long, I was the one that was in charge
Mhm.
of the budget. I was in charge of the investing. I was in charge of all of it. And we would go to have conversations and I would get frustrated, probably more so than he would. He'd be like, let's do this and let's do this. And I'm like, no, 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 because I could see
Yeah.
like the whole financial picture and all he could see was, I'm working hard. Let's,
Yeah.
do all of these wild and crazy things. And I'm like, yeah, you are working hard, but you didn't get a paycheck until you were 41. So we have a lot of catching up to do. When we first started out, we were the last year of his fellowship, and we got invited to a fancy dinner by a financial planning
Oh,
group that
classic.
was specifically targeted towards physicians. I want to be a little bit careful there because I realize my business model is set up on addressing specific issues that are in physician families. And
Yeah.
so I don't want to hold that against them. But they sold us a bunch of stuff,
Mm.
which I know
Yeah.
we needed some of it.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a real good map laid
Yeah.
out. And so I think in my husband's mind, he was like, well, we're good because we did all of these things that
Yeah.
person said. And I'm like, no, that was the bottom beginning rung. And so we had a lot of conversations trying to figure out what to do with our money, how to make it grow in the timeline that we had. We weren't starting at 30. We have to actually save more than what that other person is saving because we have a completely different situation. So that's where I want to go next. How do you have conversations around money where maybe there's a mismatch in awareness about what is going on with your money and maybe the other partner's awareness about I'm bringing in a lot of money? Like these difficult conversations, how can you get them started in a way that makes them easy? What do you do?
First off, I would compliment you for owning the finances while your husband was early career or in training. Because I feel like oftentimes the spouse doesn't like money and the physician's working and doesn't have time for money, then like neglect just happens for a long time. So I would encourage if anybody's in that place right now, just this podcast could be like your entry point. Just start learning. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't feel like you need to solve everything financial in the next day. But I would just say start educating yourself.
That's a good permission slip for the people who feel behind. Let's talk specifically about money conversations.
Money conversations are extremely hard, and I empathize with it because I am not immune to money arguments with my wife. One of the first things to understand in a relationship is that you each come from a different background with money. Did you grow up lower class, upper class, middle class? Did your parents talk about money, or was money a source of stress and fighting? And what do you value as a human being? What do you value about money? Is it security? Is it freedom? Is it safety? Is it contribution and giving to others? And then understanding your spouse. So I would even just like start there. Like, where do you guys both come from? Because that's probably the
Yeah.
source of arguments. Understanding that would be like a great first step. And then your guys' shared values. So setting out like family core values, maybe. So then it helps you to make decisions. So each have your own backgrounds, own values, shared values for you guys as well.
And as you were talking about background, that has really been the source because I had a lot of anxiety around money. And it was kind of the messaging that I grew up with was just save, 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 save.
Yeah.
Like there is no fun because someday something terrible is going to happen and you're going to wish you had that money and
For
not
sure.
done this other thing. But let's go back to values. And this is one of the things that I wish that we had done. I wish so many other physician families, as they get closer to this period where they're transitioning from one stage to another. And I wish more people had these value conversations, really objective value conversations, because too often you ask somebody what their values are and it's like faith, family, my wife. It's like, yes, but are those really your values or are those just the values that you think you have? Because my husband and I, we can agree on those values, but there's like 100 different values. And where did those rank? So being able to like design the life that you want before you get into a position where you've taken on a mortgage or a sports car or anything like that, where you've set yourself up to be in conflict with what your values
or
are.
a contract that has a bunch of call on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how would you do that? Let's imagine we just graduated residency. We've got a job starting in September. We're trying to figure out what do we do with our paycheck. What does that values conversation look like in relationship to your money?
I absolutely love this. And one thing I will say for those physicians who are graduating and starting their attending job, if you have a month or two off, enjoy it because you don't know when you're going to get a month off for the rest of your life. There's a really great piece by the Gottman Institute, and it's called The Meaning of Money. I personally call it the money love languages, right? If you've ever read the 5 love languages, I'm like, these are the money love languages. So do this with a lot of our like client families, especially during the onboarding phase. And we pull it up, and typically I just pull it up, share the screen, and I say, okay, if you look at the screen, there's security, which is feeling safe. There's freedom, which is doing the things you always wanted to do. There's success, which is like making it or like personal development. Love is feeling cared for. Power is a sense of well-being. I don't necessarily love the word power, but I get it with a sense of well-being. There's significance, like having importance or being desired. And then survival is taking care of family, and contribution is giving back, contributing to others, whether that's family, charities, or whatever.
Yeah, security is definitely mine, hands down, for years, and it probably still is.
So I'd pull that up and say, okay, let's look at this together. How about you two try to guess each other's? And that's always a fun exercise to do. I think this would be a great way to understand each other's background and your values around money specifically. Like just pull this up and ask each other, like, what does this mean to you? What are your top 3? And then typically when I'm in a meeting, I'll ask why. And 9 times out of 10, it's like clockwork where they talk about their childhood. Like, my mom and dad were XYZ. I grew up and money was always a really stressful topic and we didn't have much. So I felt insecure my entire childhood. So I need an emergency fund that at least has $100K in it. That's going to make me sleep like a baby at night, you know? So it's like those little types of things that come up. Or some people like, you know, might say, like, you know, I grew up a little bit more secure and we traveled a bunch, or maybe I wasn't able to travel. So like freedom is really important to me. Like I don't want to have a call schedule. I want to be able to do the things that I want to do when I want to do them. So I would start with that and have you guys like guess each other and just have like an open conversation about it. And then I feel like actually defining core values, if you haven't done it, like you could Google a list of values, or you could just ask yourself some thought thought-provoking questions. Like, if I were to teach my kids 3 values that I would want them to cherish for the rest of their life, what would they be? Or if I went into a high school right now and had to give a presentation on 3 values that I would want them to carry on through the rest of their life, what would they be? Or who do you admire in society and what values do they possess? And then you
Yeah.
kind of start compiling this like list of 20, 30 different like words. It could be like impact, growth, excellence, adventure, health, integrity, loyalty, like all these different things. And typically it's going through and narrow them down to 10 and then down to 5 and then down to 3 and then let them sit for a month and go back, review them.
A month might feel a little bit slow, but I totally get why. You don't want that initial gut reaction. You want some time to sit with it and make sure that you're going in the right direction.
What's most important is values are a goalpost for how you should live your life. I think a lot of people, when they hire a financial advisor, they're like, they think they're just going to get all the math-based decisions. It's like, mathematically, you should probably pay off your student loans in 1 year, but are you going to be able to have any fun? Are you going to miss all your friends' weddings? Are you going to be burnt out because you're picking up a bunch of extra shifts? I think that's where kind of the values can tie into the finances, helping you as a family make your decisions. And I believe each partner in the marriage should have their own set of core values, and then you guys should come up with a combined value.
Now that we've talked about the values, how often should you have these money conversations with your spouse?
I would say target monthly. Weekly's even better, even if it's for like 10 or 15 minutes. If you're feeling burnt out after, a 12-hour shift, I don't think that's the best time to have a money conversation.
That's the hard part. Is like,
Yeah.
when is the right time to have these conversations? I don't want to have this money conversation when he gets home at 7 p.m. and he's got to turn around and go in
For sure.
at 6 a.m. and he still needs to work out. He needs to eat. He wants to say hi to the kids. He needs some time. When are we having these conversations?
Yeah, I typically find, like, if you want to go to like a coffee shop and kind of do like a coffee date, like, morning is typically, at least for me, I'm feeling
Yeah.
energized. I got a little caffeine going through the veins. Like, typically can be a good time to do it versus doing it at 9 p.m. It just really depends on your week and like your rhythms. I know sometimes if I'm off, I want to do nothing that an adult would do, So that can be really challenging as well. There's another acronym that I love. It's called BAM-FAM, and that's book a meeting from a meeting. But essentially, never like leave yourself in no man's land. Always book the next
Yes.
meeting.
Bam, fam, book a meeting from a meeting. I am totally stealing that. I already do that, but I didn't know that it had such a great acronym.
You know that you have something on the calendar and you can pivot and adjust it. So I wouldn't get too crazy caught up on like, oh my gosh, we aren't doing this every month. We're falling behind. Like I said earlier, monthly at the least, but maybe even like quarterly, at the very least. Typically in the first year that we work with a physician family, especially during the first like 120 days, it's very intensive getting organized, declaring your values, setting your goals, building the financial plan. But typically as time goes on and clients are in their second, third, fourth year, we might see them 4 times a year, because they're a little bit more on cruise control. One other thing that I would say to understand is, I don't know if you've heard this before, Kendra, the law of familiarity. I think this is really important. Law of familiarity essentially says those closest to us probably don't hear us as well. You could be the best nutritionist on planet Earth, like you're training Olympians, and your spouse might not listen to your nutrition advice, but if a different person said the same exact thing as you, they'd be like, oh my gosh, that is like a breakthrough idea. I never thought about it that way. And that's typically where I would say like find, the expert to help facilitate that conversation. Because I've had a lot of clients tell me that it's even felt like productive marriage therapy in our meetings together because you have someone facilitating the conversations.
Trust me, I've got children. I've got 5 of them. 3 of them are now over the age of 18. And I joked with one of my friends, I'm like, why don't I just talk to your daughter and you talk to my daughter? Because they are not listening.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
have great advice. We do quarterly meetings with our financial planner. And so we have that. At least we know we are going to be talking about it quarterly. And then usually when things come up, whether it's he wants to go on vacation or I'm looking to buy something, then we have those conversations. I think we were still kind of in the middle of how to have a really productive conversation. So What else do we have there? We talked about values. We talked about having these regular meetings, whether they're weekly, monthly, quarterly, about the law of familiarity and about the need to sometimes bring somebody else in to help you have those conversations.
Sure.
Is there anything else?
I think a couple like key things to understand as it relates to your money is once you get past the values and everything, now it's like, okay, let's get a little bit tactical here. So understanding your like household financial vital signs, essentially coming up with a net worth statement.
Somebody listening to this right now may have just heard net worth statement and maybe thrown up a little bit in their mouth, especially if they're still in residency or those first couple of years when they're actually making money, because typically they're starting at a negative net worth, and that's sometimes really hard to look at. What would be on this net worth statement?
So all your different accounts, get them in one place. Go through and see what do we have for life insurance, disability insurance? Do we have our estate plan, our checking, savings, brokerage accounts, like all the different things, just get it in one place. I think that's understand your key like financial vitals, which is like net worth statement, your free cash flow, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. And then looking at some of your defensive strategies like estate planning, life insurance, disability insurance, and just having full clarity on that. So that's like the first thing. Second would be understanding your cash flows. So just basic money in, money out, an app like Monarch or Rocket Money, but just understanding household cash flows. So like on a monthly basis, how much comes in net of all your taxes, retirement plan contributions. Make sure you understand how much you're contributing to all that as well. And then how much goes out on a monthly basis as well. It's going to change month to month, but just like take the last 12 months, divide it by 12, and that'll give you like a good idea. And next is your free cash flow. So understanding, okay, of this, how much do we have left over? Hopefully you have money left over. And if not, you might have to go a little bit back to the drawing board, right? But your free cash flow is basically your fuel to amplify your present life, travel more, go on more date nights, or put away towards your future goals, paying down student loans, saving for kids' college, putting money into a brokerage account to buy your dream lake house in 10 years, retirement, like all the stuff, right?
Okay, I want to go back to something that you said just a moment ago about having cash flow is like fuel for your life, because that is totally what I believe also. But I love that you use the word fuel. That is what makes life good, especially date nights and travel, in any way that you can be more present in the life that you're actually living today while you're also planning for the future. So the net worth statement and the cash flow, that's where we're starting.
If you feel like you have no awareness of your money, start here. And then the third component is your vision. So like, what are your guys' specific goals, right? And then you can really come together like, okay, here are our vitals. Here's our cash flow. Here's our goals. You could probably use ChatGPT and say like, hey, we have these goals. What's it going to cost to get there? And ChatGPT can probably help you with that too.
Yeah.
And then is my free cash flow enough to be able to hit these future goals? That would be like where I would start for anybody listening, is just like gain awareness of those things. And then after that, and I think this is probably the most like getting organized financially, like people put it off for years. And then once you do it, it's like a breath of fresh air. And it's just like getting up and going, you haven't been to a gym before and weight lifted and you like, trying to get the courage to go do it. It's no different, right? So I just like say, rip the Band-Aid and do it, but do it methodically. And then I think the hardest part is executing this plan, right? So like we have our goals, we know how much we need to save, but what does it look like? So if we're going to have, let's say like a weekly money rhythm and it's like 15 minutes, right? So 3 agenda items, 15 minutes total, 5 minutes each. Item 1 will just be like weekly wins and pulse check. So you start with, what did we win on last week? Not what went wrong, what are we behind on, what did we actually win on?
Yes, always start with celebrating wins.
Always. Crucial.
Always.
Maybe you pack 3 lunches 3 days in a row instead of door dashing. Maybe you didn't impulse buy on Amazon at 11 p.m. Maybe you remembered to talk at all about money, right? And that counts. Then the pulse check is overall what's been feeling heavy with money this week. Not what's broken, what's heavy, because heaviness is data. Heaviness tells you where the friction is before it becomes a fight. So that could probably take 5 minutes. And then next item is just cash flows like we talked about. So pull up your Rocket Money or Monarch app and just review the last week. Awareness is everything. This isn't strict budgeting. This is just knowing, okay, last week we earned 20,000 and we spent 12. Cool. We had left eight left over. That's a huge win, you know? So just like that awareness, right? So money in, money out. Where's our emergency fund? How do we feel? And then last thing is, how did we do last week with the budgeting, right? And that's 5 minutes. And then item 3 is like outstanding projects and like vitals for the next week. So this would be for you and your partner, like what outstanding projects or vitals do we have for the next week? And who's the DRI, the directly responsible individual for that? And then lastly, you just bam, fam it, book a meeting from a meeting, same time next week, non-negotiable. And I know that's easier said than done with like a physician family. So maybe it's the same time next month. A couple with a 15-minute weekly rhythm will outperform a couple with grand financial ambitions and zero structure every year of their lives. And maybe it's monthly, right? If that feels like too heavy. So just pick the day and the time, text your spouse right now and book the first one.
Awesome. We've got a couple minutes left, so I want to make sure that we end our conversation on something else also equally as practical, because I know that there are going to be people listening to this thinking, whether they're going to tackle their money or not. Right. And sometimes this is really just like a question of trust, like who can I actually trust? And I think I certainly have been, especially after our first experience, kind of this quiet wariness around financial advisors, because we've watched the physician family community and demographic kind of get treated like a revenue opportunity. Like you can charge premium pricing to a physician family, the assumption that there's money to extract. And, it's always this like sense of someone is selling rather than serving. And I think it's not an irrational wariness. It is actually earned. And so I want to ask you directly, how does a physician spouse find a financial advisor that she can actually trust? Like, what are the questions that she should be asking? And what are the red flags that she should be watching for?
Great question. So first and foremost, I'd say there's 3 different kinds of financial advisors that I typically see. First being that there's product salesmen, right? You experience that with the steak dinner at Ruth Chris, and they're going to talk about annuities and whole life insurance, and it's going to be a great time. And then every time they call you, they're trying to sell you something or the new hot stock or whatever it is. Typically that's commission based, and they aren't held to a best interest standard. There's financial advisors that are more portfolio managers. So they manage your portfolio. They charge 1% a year. Some of them do a great job, and you see them quarterly, see them 6 times a year, and they help you outside of just the portfolio. But a lot of them in this space only manage your portfolio, and they probably have 500 to 1,000 clients, and they just don't have the time or bandwidth to see all of them. And then the third is going to be an actual like coaching type of advice relationship where they give you advice, and also you're delegating work. So one thing that's really, really important outside of that is understanding what a fiduciary means. I think that is the most important thing. That'd be the first question I would ask a financial advisor. And a fiduciary, in plain language, is someone who is legally required to act in your best interest. That's it. It's the same standard of care physicians are held to. If they don't uphold it, it's malpractice.
Yeah, that is the line, the same standard as malpractice. And I don't think most physician families have ever heard it put that way. That's serious.
If you're sitting across someone and you can't tell, first off, if you just get like that feeling in your gut, like don't give the person an hour of your time, just end the meeting and leave. I would say like first and foremost. But question 1 would just be like, are you a fiduciary? Question 2, do you have any conflicts of interest in working with me? Question 3, can you go in and out of being a fiduciary? Are you dual registered? So there's actually some advisors where in some capacity they're a fiduciary, but then they can like put on their suitability hat and they can go earn commissions on like investments and trades. So you want to make sure that they're not dual registered, and if they're not, they'd be called fee only. And how are you paid is another really important one. You'd be blown away by the number of potential clients that I sit down with. They have no idea how much they're paying their advisor every single year.
Yeah.
Is it a flat fee, a percentage of assets, a commission on products you sell me, a mix? If the answer is vague or defensive or changes mid-sentence, that's a red flag. A fee-only fiduciary can answer that question in one clean sentence without breaking eye contact. And that's exactly who you're looking for. Other red flags, like if they pressure you to decide today, if they can't explain what they're recommending and why. And I think it's really important that they understand the specific nuances of physician families. And I think a lot of people, they make the mistake of thinking like, maybe they see their advisor once a year and he's just managing their portfolio and they're like, all right, I'm good to go. They don't have a budget. They don't know what they have to save to hit their goals, but they have like a money guy. And they're like, oh, I'm good. I delegated all my money. I'll just say there is so much more to living a healthy financial life than a portfolio. It's a vehicle to get you there, but it's not that challenging and it's not the only thing. What matters is taking control, getting organized, adjusting, and navigating extremely difficult financial conversations and making key decisions and moving on.
We didn't know what questions to ask when we were getting started. We just knew that we were not equipped. And I think this is true for most physician families. Neither my husband or I have parents we can go to ask about investing advice or like, what do you do with this amount of money? And so we really did need some mentorship and some coaching around money. And we thought we were getting it that first time. And then, as time goes on, then you recognize that that's not exactly what you were needed. You needed something else. And so I'm glad to hear that whole description of what it is and those questions that hopefully will help find the right people to help them actually create the life that they want, because it is so much more than creating a portfolio, and why values are so important. Like, your choices have to align with your values. And if you and your spouse have different values, then you've got to come together on at least some of them to make this work. You've got to sometimes bring other people in. And I think that's why what you do probably is coaching. Like what I do is coaching. I go into other people's lives and provide them with a different perspective or ask different questions to help elicit what it is that they really want and to help them figure out why it is that they want what they want. And I think that is so valuable. So thank you so much for being here today. Before I let you go, I want to give you a chance to share, where can people find you? Tell us about your podcast or anything you might have that could be helpful for the people who are listening today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'd say that if any of this resonated with anybody and you want the free financial wellness diagnostic with someone who's a fee-only fiduciary, I promise I won't try to sell you like a whole life insurance policy or something like that. That is something we offer. Kendra, I can get you a link in the show notes, but you just go to iamwealth.com and click start now. And it's 100% free. And it'll help you get organized and see where you're at. That'd be the best first place for the listener if you're like, I don't know what to do next. I have a podcast. It's on all major platforms called The Life Well Lived, A Physician's Guide to Wealth. And then I'm also on Instagram, and it's just my name, James Nutter, Nutter like Nutter Butter Cookies with an underscore afterwards. And let's go build the life you've been quietly designing in your head for years. It's absolutely time. Kendra, this is awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
All right. Okay, so I want to close with this. The way things have been is not the way they have to stay. And the fact that money has felt complicated or like a source of tension inside your marriage does not mean that it is permanent. The conversations, the plan that actually includes you, that is available not someday, but now. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If any of this stirred something up, if you found yourself nodding along or maybe feeling a little exposed, I want to give you somewhere to take that. I put together a free guide called Relationship Plans That Work. We do talk a little bit about money in it because, like we just talked about with James, what you value will show up in your spending, whether you've named those values or not. Inside the guide, you'll also find prompts to help you start these conversations, the kind that let you build a life and a relationship that feel as good on the inside as it looks on paper. You can grab it in the show notes, and I will see you next week.